Elevate TV, advancing kingdom lifestyle.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this yet another wonderful episode of NEXGEN Warriors, which is coming to you on Elevate TV, where we are advancing kingdom lifestyle. Today we want to talk about engaging young people in ministry and how to reach out to them. And of course, you know, I'm not an expert in these issues. Mine is just to moderate and to ask those questions that you've always wanted to ask. And so with me in studio today, I have a pastor, and this is a man who has done great exploits for the kingdom, and we are very much graced today to have him on the show, and he's actually hosting us at his offices right here at Biblica, Kenya. I tell you, the guy in studio and on set today is a man who knows what he's talking about. Academically, he's qualified, and in terms of evangelism, he has done it. Welcome on board, Jesse.
Thank you, Collins.
Wow.
What a joy to be here.
Awesome.
And I almost wanted to meet that person you were introducing. The way you have introduced him.
Wow.
Yes. But thank you for the kind words.
Wow.
Yes.
You know, when I was talking to our common friend,
yes,
before I got to you, she was telling me, you need to interview that guy.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to matters engaging young people,
yes,
that guy has done a lot of stuff. You need to interview him. And so I was like, really accept my invite. But I'm humbled that despite the fact that you hold a very high position in the organization, you still allowed yourself and allowed us to have you on set despite your busy schedule. So we are very much humbled.
Thank you. I am also humbled that you have me in the show.
Yes.
Titles besides, I mean, ministry is ministry. All this, I see them as responsibilities, and so for me, it's a humble opportunity to share the little that we know about youth ministry and just to engage our listeners. For me, it's a passion. I'm really passionate about salvaging the young generation. I know there are people who are better placed to speak about this. They are authorities, but in what the Lord has graced us, we definitely can say a few things that I believe will be beneficial to the listeners. Yes.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So on that note, let us get into it. Young people and ministry. Mm-hmm. What is their place?
Young people and ministry. Let me just begin from the place of course, every other pastor is complaining that young people have left church, and we don't have young people who can be engaged in ministry. That is true in some setups. I'm sure you have traveled far and wide and gone to a number of churches, and you see the challenge. Now, I did a paper a while back trying to find out the reasons as to why young people have not been engaged in ministry, and I'm not able to share all that in very limited time. But the first thing I believe that we need to do as ministers who have been called to reach out to young people is to understand young people. Understand where they are at as young people. And when I say that, it sounds very obvious, but for some reason, the older you get, you forget that you were once young. You forget the challenges that you had. You forget the struggles that you had, and you now begin to reason like an adult, and that, in a sense, makes you look at them with a lot of judgment, and you're condemning every other thing that they are doing, and because of that, and your perception and towards the young people, you find people have built a wall where young people feel that they cannot relate to you anymore because you do not identify with them in any way. Young people have a lot of potential. If you see any thriving church and any growing church, any growing ministry, I mean, at a glance, you look at who is playing the keyboard, it's a young person. Who's on the drums? A young person. Who is leading the worship and doing the technical work is a young people. So for a church to be thriving and a church to be growing, you need young people. You need young people, and statistics indicate that, I mean, if that is anything to go by, 70% in the upwards of our population are young, then that needs to be reflected also in our congregation. That has to be reflected to show that the church is growing. Now, we can go on and on about understanding young people, because they are looking for someone who will identify with them, not someone who will rebuke and condemn them, someone who will guide them, walk with them, someone who will, in a sense, even empathize with them. Now, I'll give an example. Today, for instance, we have, I mean, looking at any media briefing, you will not miss a young person has done X, a young person has done that. If I touch briefly on the subject, for instance, on sex, because we have so much happening around sexuality. Why I use the word empathize is generations before, something like the kind of sexuality we are seeing being propagated today was not there. I mean, pornography, for instance, was in the Playboy magazines, where you would find somebody with a few leaves of a Playboy magazine. But right now, this generation has been bombarded by sexuality from all angles. I mean, in the media, I mean, in the billboards, it's even so public. At the click of a button, you can access porn. And why I say sympathize or empathize is we don't think how we would have acted if we were also bombarded with all that at once. Really, it is difficult to be a young person in this day and age. That is what I'm trying to say. It is difficult because everywhere you look, I mean, even in the advertisements, I mean, what does cooking oil have to do with a lady dressed in a bikini, for instance? I mean, this generation has been bombarded by sexuality left, right, and center. And some of the responses and the reactions of their behavior has been triggered by the day and age that we are living, the exposure. Yes.
Now, building on that, on what you just said, that it is difficult being a young person.
Yes.
And you've just talked about the aspect of sexuality. Is there any other aspect that you feel that the young people are getting it difficult, making them not to survive in this time, quote unquote?
Well, we have a number of challenges that young people are facing. We have media, for instance. Even those who are in church are still struggling. If you were to ask a young person in church, who is the artist that you look up to, you will be surprised at the names that they will throw in there. You will hear a few secular artists, and young people have idolized some people because of their fame, because of their flashy lifestyle. And I mean, I've asked young people in churches, and you hear a few names being mentioned, and you're like, this is coming from a youth leader. That is one in church, not even in the world. Somebody who cannot recite Psalms 23 but can sing 3 verses of a secular song, word for word, or even almost better than the artists themselves. So media is one of the challenges. Of course, we have the challenge of drugs. Drugs have evolved. The common drugs that have been used previously, like the marijuana, dom, bangi, or whatever they want to call it. There's alcohol, but drugs have evolved. Right now, there are drugs that can be bought over the counters. Young people have discovered that there are things you can buy and they can intoxicate you, and there are many other things. You just need to inhale and you're high. Right now we have drugs laced in cookies. We have drugs laced in cakes.
Yeah.
You can order them and you will be high, flying like a kite, like they say. And so that is the other challenge. And unfortunately, people who are reaching out to young people who are closed to their world don't understand what is happening. And so it becomes very hard for them to even reach out to them. The other subject is relationships. It is taboo for us in many cultures to speak about matter sexuality, and we keep asking the question, at what age should I speak to a young person matter sexuality? And so we keep procrastinating and saying maybe they will be taught at school, and parents relegate that responsibility to other people.
The teachers.
I'll give an example. I was in a certain community. Let me just protect them. And I talked about matter sexuality. During the break, one of the elders told me, my friend, you should have warned me what you are talking about. I felt I didn't know which door to run from, because in our culture, we don't talk about sexuality. But we are hiding our head in the sand if we don't address this, and we need to address it explicitly. I'll tell you why. The age of sexual encounter in our country has gone down, actually goes down by the year. We have an average of young people at age 11 have already had their first sexual encounter. And so when you're now trying to say that our taboo keeps us from talking matter sexuality to these young people, what are you saying? What you're not saying, they already know. And they have other sources. We've talked about the media. They have exposure to the internet. They have more information than you are.
And you know, unfortunately, those other sources are not giving them the correct information.
Exactly. Internet is double-edged. It will give you both good and bad, both positive and negative. And they're accessing that. I mean, this is a generation where they are digital natives. Yeah? And the parents are digital immigrants. Then they just found themselves. And that is why
I think you need to repeat that statement.
Yeah.
The generation is digital.
They are digital natives. They have been born in the
digital world.
Yes. So they are natives. They understand it. That is why a young kid can lock you out of your phone, and you have to threaten them. Rudisha your password, and the phone is yours. You have the manual, but they understand it better than you.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a few seconds for them just to run through your gadget and discover a few things that you've not done in years. That is because they are digital natives. And the parents who are digital immigrants are still trying to find their way.
They're figuring it out.
The only thing they know is maybe M-Pesa. Yeah, and the rest of the things they're still trying to figure. And I mean, most parents would admit that you need your young ones to tell you how to find your way across your phone. And that is the other challenge that, of course, we will be discussing in this show, and just seeing what can parents do, what can church leaders do to accommodate these young people, and hopefully by the grace of God salvage this generation for Christ.
Wow.
Yes.
And I want to take you back a bit. There's the issue of sexuality, and I remember before we came on set, you were giving me some statistics.
Yes.
And now I want us to go through those statistics.
Yes.
And you see, the viewer, even as you watch,
yes,
we want you to understand that what we are talking about here are not myths. These are facts, these are statistics, this is research work that has been done. And just before we came on set, we are just looking at those figures, although the research was done in 2019. But I can tell you, even right now, the pervasive nature of the society has even gone higher, meaning even the figures we're about to give you might even be lower. So maybe you want to say something into the statistics.
Yes, and out there we have both global and local statistics. I chose to do local because this is what really concerns us. Now, in 2019, a sample group of 1,141 young people was brought together, and they had to answer some of these questions. Now, what came out of that research, 80% of the 1,141 young people confessed that they had engaged in sex over the school holidays. Now that tells you what happens during the school holidays. The other thing that you would need to know about that, and this is something that I found even personally from a friend of mine who is a pharmacist. He said that over the school holidays, they have noticed. Now, thank God he's a Christian. Whenever he sees a young person asking for the pill, he does not sell, or any contraceptives. He says to me that my conscience cannot allow me to do that. But he sees them going down the road to the next shop. And pharmacists have actually noted that over the school holidays, contraceptives, the sales of contraceptives goes high. A friend of mine was even telling me their young niece, had put on so much weight, and when she asked, how come you suddenly put on a lot of weight? And she casually said, nizi madawa. And after she interrogated her father, she actually found out that this high school girl had been on the pills for a while. And so these were after effects of using the drug. Now, that confirms these statistics, that 80% of these young people over the school holidays. Now, I dare not imagine what was happening over the longer holidays.
And the lockdowns.
Yes.
Wow.
56% of them confessed that they knew they had information about the use of contraceptives. So that means the other percentage had not didn't have enough knowledge of contraceptives and probably did not use it. That now explains the rise in pregnancy in schools. I have personally been to a school, again I will not mention the name, but in that school there were 16 pregnancies in one term. It was really shocking. A school in this country. Now, we have about 30% who confessed that they were using the emergency pills. 70% of males who were questioned say they used the condoms. Again, there is another research that indicated those who use condoms, up to over 40%, and that could have changed, do not even know how to use them.
And I think we also need to clarify that the research dealt with teens. So these are teenagers.
Yes. And condoms in the first place were meant for family planning. To the best of my knowledge. Now, most of them confessed, again, that is about 80% confessed that they had done what they call clubbing. Clubbing is when you just go out to the parties, and that is where they had their first sexual encounters. It's important that parents know that. 17%, it's shocking, 17% confessed that they were engaged. Engaged in the sense that, and engagement in our context really means where this is my spouse, I'm going to get married.
Exactly.
Now, how do you get engaged when you are in high school? That's a question, very big question that should come to our minds as we hear this. But this is a good thing. 66% were likely to be engaged in a religious activity. That means because of churches or ministries that provided an alternative platform for them. Remember, one of the challenges that we have told young people what not to do, but we have not given them the alternative of what to do. And so we have this 66% that say they were likely to attend a gig or a church function or something that will involve them, and hence they would not be idle going to all these other parties. We had 25% who said they were engaged in sexual intercourse were below age 13.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, of course, I've talked about the age of encounter being 11. We have documented reports even in the media indicating that there was a child who gave birth at, was it 8 years? It's there. You can check it out. It's available on the media platforms. And so this is a child who already has a child.
A child has a child.
Yes.
Wow.
That is how that is how shocking this we have come. We have 62% of the male students who were responded to the questionnaire confessed that they had watched pornographic content over their holidays or whenever else they were watching. The percentage of young girls who watched was a bit lower. It was 37%. But of course, we know that there's a correlation between the watching of porn and the heightened desire to engage in sexual intercourse. And we also have, this also was very shocking. Majority of them said that having sexuality is just friendship. Yeah, it is nothing. They just have friends with benefits. That means you can have multiple sexual partners who you can meet up once in a while and have sexual intercourse with no strings attached. And so for them, it isn't that much of a big deal. That is directly from their mouths. Now, much as we have given all this, it is important for me to say this, that religion and spirituality were found to be core in giving guidance and offering guidance in matters pertaining to sex, because they have all the sources, like we said, but some of the sources are not giving the correct information. But they said, and those who said that they had, in a sense, salvaged, because we talk about, when we go out there and we've met these young people who are saying that I've messed up, we don't judge them. We tell them that God offers you an opportunity to commit to secondary virginity, where you're saying, from now on, the person I will share or become intimate with is the one that God has for me. And we tell them that you can actually make that commitment. And in fact, we take it a step higher and we give them an ATM card. Now, for most of you, ATM would mean automated teller machine. For us, it means abstinence till marriage. And in that card, we encourage them to write down, and in most legal transactions, there has to be something in writing, and it is more binding if it is written. We ask them to sign that document and say that I will commit to become intimate with a person who I am married to. And in that document, we actually encourage them to write a love letter. Kwa lugha ya mtaani, when they are writing that love letter, we tell them, just express yourself, jimwage ndani ya hiyo barua, write all the Google all the lines that you would want to, but finalize that by saying, I will keep myself pure. This is what I tell them. When you have made that commitment, you are actually true to the line that says, I loved you before I met you, because you have actually made a commitment for somebody you even don't know, and you have made a commitment before God, asking him to keep you until you are now you're now married to the person of your dreams. And so I think that is just a bit about this. We could go on and on to the global statistic, but I think let's remain local for now. Yes.
I want us to actually take a short break and have our glasses of water. But on the other end, or on the other side of the break, we are just going to look at what is the way forward, what are the solutions, because we have seen the challenges. So how is Biblica, how are other organizations, how are churches coming in to deal with these challenges? See you on the other side of the show.
C. Name.
Kid.
Country.
Colombia.
Animal.
Kangaroo. Cat.
Next letter.
Budgeting. I never used to budget. So unapata manzi ni 15th do imeisha kwa buta. Hii do ilikuwa hivyo kupeleka mpaka end month and you're supposed even to save. You've not saved, you've not budget any. I think budgeting helps you, that's what you said. Me, that's what I learned.
Well, thank you and welcome back to the second bit of the show. You know, I actually got so much into the conversation and I even forgot to remind you that we are live on YouTube, we are live on Facebook. So you can always follow us on Elevate TV Kenya on Facebook and on YouTube, and remember to subscribe to the channel. There are also numbers passing down on your screen. Reach out to us and I promise you we will always respond to your queries. And if there's any person or any guest you feel you need to see them on this show, just give us a text, give us a call, and we'll definitely make it happen. Because at Elevate TV, as long as it's something that advances Kingdom lifestyle, we will do it. So,
Yes.
let me say, Pastor Jesse. Pastor Jesse, on this other side of the show, I want us now to look at the solutions.
Yes.
You see, we've dealt with the challenges,
Yes.
and we've said the sexuality, media, what have you.
Yes.
But now somebody is wondering, now these guys, watu tu wanaongea tu mashida. Kwani sisi tunakuanga tu mashida? How can they
Yes.
engage us? Now,
Yeah.
maybe from a practical point of view,
Yes.
is there something practical that you as Jesse has done maybe in the past
Yes.
that you can maybe bring to light? Because I believe there are also pastors who are watching us right now, and they're wondering, now I have all these young people, what do I do with them?
Yes.
You know me, I was brought up in the 70s, 80s and what have you.
Yes.
And you've said now as we are digital immigrants,
Yes.
now these digital natives, how do I deal with them? So what is the alternative?
Yeah, I'll give some ways that I've done personally, and then I will also recommend a tool that I believe can be very useful.
All right.
Now, when I served as a youth pastor, I remember one time walking in town after service, and we were near Kenya Cinema, where F2 used to be. Now, I was shocked to see that there were young people who had just come from church. Now, of course, they were not excited to see me passing there because they knew that their bubble had been busted and they were trying to hide their faces by pulling their capes down. Well, I saw them anyway and I said hi to them. But it really disturbed me why that would happen. But again, one of the things that I need to say about addressing young people, first, think like a young person. Think how you thought when you were young. And if you are not born again when you were young, better still, have the mind of a non-believer who is a Christian. Because I remember personally, when I was not born again as a young person, I thought these young guys I saw going to church in suits need to get a life. That was how I looked at them. I thought they were boring and
They're
they had
so
lost
boring,
it.
huh?
I mean, get a life. And so that is how they're looking at you. And so now if you understand their mind, you will know how to approach them. Now, that disturbed me. I went to my senior pastor and I said, there are things that we need to probably do differently. And I remember one of the things I personally thought I would do is to dress down to identify with them. Now, I'm not saying this is the you have to do this. No, I am giving you an example of what I did. And so dressing down for me meant they're mostly in jeans and t-shirt. Let me be like that. Because if I go in my suit, they struggle to identify with me. And just by that act, they would feel like I'm one of them.
Uni boys.
Yes, uni moja wetu. And after that, having discovered that music played a very big role in a young person's life, we introduced a concert. And we had a concert that was called Jam Session also. But this one had a meaning. It was Jesus Almighty.
I was almost thinking you brought jam to the church.
But jamming has to do with dancing.
Yeah.
And we're saying you can actually dance in church.
Yeah.
And now, in this context, we actually tried to make it as youth-friendly as possible. We had contemporary Christian artists. And I'm very careful when we go to Christian artists. I need to call them Christian ministers. There are ministers and there are others who are trying to be. And I'm not ashamed of saying that. I've called some out. Personally, I will not call them here, but I've called some of them and I've told them, I think you need to you need to change. You need to, there's some things that don't reflect Christ. But I believe there are those who are really called, and you can see that in the content of their message is really gospel. And they're not singing about other extra biblical things, and that is how we need to judge them.
And you know, one of my friends normally say, there are those who are in the gospel industry,
yes,
and others are in the gospel ministry.
Yes.
So maybe we don't need to deal with the industry. Let us focus on the ministry.
On the ministry.
Yes.
And so I called those ones who are in the ministry, and I told them, this is what we want to do. Young people are going to jam session, and others are going to madhouse. How can we give them an alternative in church? And so we discovered that young people sleep a lot. So we said on Sundays, they want to sleep in. They will not come for that morning service. And so let us come with a service in the afternoon, and let's have music, and that is Christian and gospel music. And we created that platform. And I remember before we did the first one, I was in prayer and I was asking God, how can I call it? And I hope I will not be controversial when I say this. I feel how we have named some of the meetings that we have, some of the crusades that we have had as churches has not been accommodative to non-believers. I mean, as a non-believer, if I come across a poster saying end time, apostolic, healing, revival, evangelistic, I mean, it confuses me.
It scares you off.
It scares me.
Yeah.
What is all this? These are difficult words. And so, I was like, for a young person, you don't even want to try that. So, I made it simple.
Make it simple.
In the posters that we did, we said, I remember the message that I put there was, the poster was written in graffiti, what kind of love is this? And there was a big question mark. Now, of course, young people, when they see the word love. They are at that age of,
exploiting.
Yeah, they want to be explorative and all that, and love means so much to them. And we left it at that. And of course, it excited most of them. And we are telling them, jam session. And the message, the theme is, what kind of love is this? And it's written in graffiti. And it's happening in the afternoon. And on top of that, there's free snacks. And
there's a gospel minister.
There's a gospel ministers coming. Honestly, why should they not come? And I remember going to the hoods and calling them, hey, what's it? Kujeni jam session, kujeni. Before ajue wamekuja wameja. And actually when they came, there was music in the house and they were dancing. And I remember even the just asking God to give me guidance on how to preach to these people, some of whom have not been in church, because our approach needs to factor that. I mean, when we are so much in church, we forget, and our approach is different. We talk to a non-Christian the way we talk to a Christian. I mean, there are terms that I cannot use when I'm talking to a non-Christian. I cannot start talking about sanctification and propitiation. I mean, what are you talking about?
What are those?
Come dilute. Talk to me at my level. And so I shared a story of a young person who was about to get married, who was excited and looking forward to hear who God had for him. And this person went to God and asked God, do you have my spouse? And the Lord said, yes, I have chosen a spouse for you. And you know, I can imagine the guy dancing and saying, kukumbukwa nayo, you know. And this guy was eager. Ameonekaniwa. He was so eager to hear from the Lord. And the Lord directed him. Come, I will show you where I have your spouse. So the Lord directed him to town, CBD. And he directed him to a street we know as K Street, Koinange Street, in case you don't know what that means. And we all know what happens in Koinange Street. And for those who don't know, that street is famous for prostitution. And he was wondering, what is my future wife doing here? What is my spouse doing here? And he was directed to that place. He was actually directed to a brothel in that famous street. And for a moment, maybe he thought she was going there to do evangelism. But I mean, how in the world would my future spouse be there? But surprisingly, God directed him to a lady there who was a prostitute. And he said, take her home, love her, accept her as your wife. Well, that was my sermon. And then I went to the texts in the Bible. Some of you already got it. That's a story of Gomer. Yeah? And so I lifted a Bible passage and brought it to their level and to their understanding. So you start from what they know and take them to what they don't know. And that was the approach. And because these guys have not been in church, they cannot stand a 1 hour sermon. It is good to be in the presence, it's good to hear the word, but where they are, you know, growth comes gradually. That's why children have to go through weaning. You drink milk, then you're weaned off, you have mashed foods. And so sometimes we want to give maize to a little child. And so at their level, I understood that they need to have just short nuggets of the word that would just keep them longing and coming again. And that's how we started the jam session. And we thank God that many would give their life, because we simply told them, would you want to connect? Would you want actually to come home? I mean, there's a way you can complicate it and say, you know, you need to first stop all this and stop drinking, stop hanging out, and then come. No. Come back as you are. God is willing to accept you just as you are and receive you. Kiswahili sometimes makes it more difficult, because if you hear an evangelist say, unataka kutakaswa ukuje ujisalimishe, you know, you feel a bit threatened. We simplified it for them and says, guys, come home. Jesus is calling you because you belong. You're coming home because that's where you belong. You don't belong to the world.
Wow.
You belong to the Father. And that was one of the approaches.
Wow.
Now, the second thing that I want to bring is this resource.
Wow.
We have a practical resource that can help you. We understand the challenges of youth ministry, and so we have come up with a resource called Reach for Life. This resource, by God's grace, has affected over 2 million lives in Africa. Well, that's a drop in the ocean compared to the numbers that we have, but that is what God has enabled us to do. And of course, with God's help and with partners, we are able to scale this up. Now, Reach for Life. This is first a Bible. It doesn't look like a Bible. Yeah? And I know some of us have believed that a Bible has to have black and a big zip. No.
And some cross.
And a big cross. Yeah, but the Bible is the Word of God. And when we thought about a young person, you first want this to be appealing to them. And I want to be very careful as I give all these methods. What we need to insist on is that methods may change, but the gospel does not change.
The message never gets old.
The message remains consistent, but the methods have to change. We have to keep adapting to different methods and models, okay? And so now in Reach for Life Fast, we had to make it appealing to a young person, that they would want to receive it and carry it.
Pastor Jesse, allow me to catch you there. There's the bit of appealing.
Yes.
Maybe you want to dig deep into it.
Yes.
How do you appeal to the young people?
Thank you for that question. You know, young people will size you up when you show up. In the first minutes, you're going to show up to talk to a young person, they are sizing you up. They are like, let's
Anakupima
hear.
kwanza.
Nakupima.
Acha tuone.
Let's hear. And in 2 or 3 minutes, they have determined whether they will listen to you
Or not.
We did it in high school. If a preacher came and he was not appealing to you, you'd actually tell the person sitting in front of you, kaa vizuri. Then you doze. It would take our chaplain to come and read the story of Eutychus, who died, to wake you up. Because there's a way he would bring it and tell you that you will die,
Nobody will
and
resurrect
Paul
you
is
here.
not there to resurrect you. And that would keep you up. But mostly, my point is that on the sizing up,
Yeah.
you'd want to size you, and you're not appealing, they will shut off. And who wants to be preaching for 2 hours and you lost people the first 3 minutes? And so that part of appealing is you need to grab their attention. How do you capture their attention? And you've noticed some preachers who want to grab the attention of the audience would begin with a joke, begin with an illustration. I've used football sometimes as a bait. If it was a match playing, you actually make reference to that match and say, Wasawa Manu. And you already see the guys are excited, and they are like, now we can listen to you. and now from there you shift and begin and transition to talking about what you are sharing. Try to look for a common ground. Try to look for a common ground where you can just hit it out with them. It is very important in the first that how you appeal to them. Even from the dressing, we have a generation that does not respect collars. Yeah, that you can show up there with your suit and collar and you say, I'm Dr. So and so. It doesn't mean anything to them. A young guy will show up there with trousers that you're not sure whether he was putting them on or removing, and he changed his mind. And he just says, Rusha Mikono! And the guys are like, yeah! You know?
This is the
That
guy.
is it. And they will actually pay to go and be told, throw your hands. Yeah? And so the appeal is very important.
Yeah,
Yes.
good. Now we can proceed to the other
Yes.
bit of the resource.
Thank you. Now, in the resource, of course, we have said it's appealing. And in the preface, we actually say that life is a party and the Bible is a dance floor.
Wow.
Life is a challenge. We need to find strength from God's word to carry on. And we say life is about love. And because it's about love, we need to dig deep into the love letter. And the love letter in this context is the Bible. Let me say this. You see, we know God by all his names. He's a creator of heaven and earth. He's a maker. We have all these great names. But there's a place where we need to identify with God as the lover of our souls. In fact, there's an old-time song that says, Jesus, lover of my soul. Jesus, I will never let you go. Now, he is not just the creator of the earth. He is a lover of my soul. That shows how he intimately loves me. And that brings a relationship. Because back in the day, they would not identify God. I would identify God with these big names because they felt like God is far removed from them. But God is so close to us. He's real and alive and ablaze. And he's so close to us. So when we think about the Bible as a love letter, because, we wrote love letters in school, and half of what we wrote was not true. Yeah, people said things that they didn't mean. For instance, why would somebody tell you they would die for you and they're still alive? Why would a joker tell you that he doesn't eat? Na jamaa kitambi iko hapa. You know, all those sweet nothings that we said to win the hearts of ladies. But Jesus actually paid the ultimate. He paid the ultimate with his life. He actually died. And so he is a lover of our souls. And when we identify him as a lover of our souls, and he is the author of the Bible, then this becomes a love letter to us. Remember, these are letters, these are epistles written to people groups, to the Ephesians, to the Corinthians. And so letters are meant to be read in continuous prose. Nobody reads a letter in paragraphs. Nobody reads a love letter, 2 sentences, they put it away, and then they come back after 2 weeks. No. We used to read our love letters with excitement. You hold the letter and you can't wait to hear what is being said, and you repeat it again and again. And that time is during prep time, by the way. Yeah, you should be reading for exams and you're busy looking at a letter, because it means so much to you. If we apply the same by considering that this is God's love letter, we would be excited even before we receive it, before we read it, and we will read it word for word in continuous prose, not just in nuggets. And everything we read there, we know that he does not only mean it, he is able to do what he has said, and he is well, I mean, we said things that we were well-meaning, but we were not able. But he is well-meaning, and he is able to bring to pass that what he said.
Wow.
Yes.
So I know my director is telling me I have less than 8 minutes to go.
Wow.
But before the 8 minutes are over, you know,
Yes.
I was just looking at this resource before we came on set.
Yes.
And there are the four, I don't know whether to call them the four values or the four principles, where you talk about believe, grow, live, and change.
Yes.
Maybe you want to say something about those four areas.
Thank you. Believe,
Grow, live,
live, and
and
change. Now, in believing, everyone believes in something. Yeah. And in Rich for Life, we say for you to breathe, you have to believe. Okay. And so we introduce them to Christ. We are living in a day and age where there's a lot of relativism. People believe in a lot of things. I mean, it's unfortunate that even if you started a church down the road and you have a very extra biblical thing and you're very dramatical, you will not lack a follower or two. And it's unfortunate that people, and simply because that we are created with a God-shaped void in us, a desire to worship. You see Paul approaching the people of Athens, and he says, you guys even have an unknown God. Let me connect you and tell you who that God is. He started from what he could see. He did not condemn them. He did not rebuke them. Now, in belief, we introduce them to Christ. Why? They are young people who are from nominal Christian homes. They're just Christians because they have a Christian name. They don't have a Christian background. If you grew up in Sunday school, your approach will be different. You assume that these things are basic, they are common. But there's someone out there whose parents have never brought them to church, or the first time they went to church was during a burial or a wedding, and that's the last time. And I know such people. And so we introduce them from the very basics. This is why I say, come dilute. Come dilute.
Don't be
from the very
complicated.
basics. Who is Jesus Christ? Who is he? What is sin? What do you mean by calling me a sinner? What is that? What is salvation? What does it mean? We go to the very basics in belief.
Wow.
After going to believe,
Yes.
we
It's
go
the grow bit.
Yes, we
The
go to grow because you need to grow in foundations. You need to go into the foundations of the word, and I actually want to read that as we go along. We grow into the foundations of the word. Now, in foundations, we look at the Bible, the church, the Holy Spirit, prayer, being more like Jesus, obedience, worship, spiritual warfare, trust, and tough times. That enables them to grow stronger and have the muscle to resist the advances of the enemy. After grow, we go to live.
Yes.
Live is where you're dealing with real life challenges. You're a young person. Even if you're a Christian, you will still struggle with the opposite sex attraction. You will struggle with all these advances simply because you're young. Okay? You struggle with peer pressure, and by the way, peer pressure is at every level. However old you are, you will still find yourself surrounded by peers, and they have some level of influence over you. And in Rich for Life, we say that we can ride on positive peer pressure by trying to rally around young people, around people who have positive values. Because if you surround yourself with people of a different kind, for instance, we say if you're around 3 drunkards, you will be the 4th one, whether you like it or not. Yeah. If you're around 5 millionaires, guess what? You have chances of being the 6th one. Yeah. And so on and so forth. So in Live, we are dealing with these challenges head on, and we have actually asked those questions that a young person would be asking. Even some very embarrassing questions. For instance, you don't expect a young person to lift their hand in church and say, I'm struggling with masturbation. No. Where do they get help? We have put that answer here from the Word of God. They can secretly go to the back page and read, how do I overcome this struggle? And that is live.
So let us go to the
Yes.
final one because our time is spent. The last one is change.
In change,
Yes.
we say that it's not enough to be a Christian and be comfortable about it. You can become a change agent. You can use your story, because everyone has a story. You can become vulnerable and share from your failures, and people will be able to draw inspiration from you. At any one point, one struggle that you've overcome, somebody is getting into that struggle. So how can you draw inspiration from each other? By sharing your story, using your gifts, and social action, and so many things that can be used. So in change is simply challenging young Christians. Don't just be comfortable that you're a Christian. Be your brother's keeper. Go out there and reach out to someone. I normally ask young people, do you have that one person who you know, this person I can be so vulnerable to, where you know if you're getting on off track, you can actually go and this person will rebuke you and you will listen to them. If you have that kind of friendship, then you stand a chance to survive, because even habits are won in group. For instance, if you're struggling with smoking, you just need to group with, and researchers have shown that if you group with about 7 other people, you have chances that you will win that battle. But if you're alone, you might be walking somewhere and you see a chimney and you feel like, hey, I feel like pulling a cigarette.
Wow.
And change is about becoming a change agent.
Wow.
Where God has placed
Wow,
you.
wow.
Thank you.
You know, my director is on my case. Is like, you need to
Yes.
sum up. So like in just 1 minute,
Yes.
I need you to look at this this camera right here, and just talk to that young person and that maybe that pastor who is wondering how to deal with young people.
Yes.
Yes.
I think I can use a model of Christ. Christ left eternity, and he left his glory in heaven and came as a human being on earth. His approach was to incarnate from being a God to becoming a human being, a creature, to identify with us so that he could reach to us. Ask yourself, what are the ways you could incarnate from where you are? What are the barriers that you can break? Come from your high horse to identify with these young people. Is it in your dressing? Is it in your speech? Do you need to learn a few Sheng words? Is it in the places that you will go to hang out with them? What can you do to come down to their level so that they can identify with you? When they identify with you, they relate with you, you have an authority to speak to them, because they already begin to know you and see that you embody what you teach. It's beyond words. It's a lifestyle. And if you are able to do that, I know by the help of God, you are able to influence this generation, because as you teach them, you are also learning a lot from them. And I tell you, there is so much you can learn from young people that will revolutionize your ministry and help you become more effective. Thank you, and God bless you.
Wow. Wow. By the way, this thing is also available as an app.
Yes.
Is it on Google Play, or
Yes.
is it on Apple Store?
It's on. You can actually download it on both. Just Google "Reach for
Yes.
Life Bible,"
Yes.
and we will also have a link running down on the screen so that
Yes.
you can actually get those details.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we want to bless the viewers. If you are young and you have a hunger for God, we want to bless you with a Bible. All you need to do is just contact us on the numbers that will be running down on the
your
screen and say that I want to have a Reach for Life Bible. Lo and behold, that prayer will be answered. We will be delighted to give a copy to you. So God bless you, and we look forward to receiving more testimonies, and God willing, we will see you again just talking about youth matters. Thank you.
And you can be assured that Pastor Jesse is going to be back on this show. We've just scratched the surface. There's so much that we could talk about, but time cannot allow us. You know, there's always another program coming up, and so we can't take their time. That has been our time. Thank you so much for watching this wonderful Saturday. I've been your host, Collins OTAS. See you again next Saturday, same place, same time. And God will greatly bless you, even as you continue to support this program. There are numbers on the screen. Just in case you need the Bible, please call us. The link is also there. Reach to us, and I can assure you you'll get this Bible free of charge. God bless you. See you next week.